So I'd like to welcome you to being with us here. And I look forward to talking with you tonight, along with my colleagues, about the SEL Academy, but more importantly, the important leadership concepts in implementing SEL programs in schools. So with that said, I'd like to open tonight's webinar. Again, it's called Leading SEL Implementation in Schools. I'm Bill Trussheim. I'm one of the facilitators. With us is Vicki Blakeney, also Patricia Heindel, who is one of the co-directors of the SEL Academy in general. And I have to extend apologies for Donna Black, because Donna is unfortunately unable to be with us tonight because of illness. So Vicki and I are both facilitators for the first two courses of the Academy Leadership Program. And what we're going to do is get started now, and we will introduce ourselves and then move on to the information at hand. So I'm Bill Trussheim. I'm a course facilitator. I'm also the Resource Center Director for the SEL Leadership Academy, and that Leadership Academy is out of St. Elizabeth University in Morristown, New Jersey. To give you a little bit of background about me, I'm a retired principal and superintendent. I did 42 years in New Jersey's public schools, and in those roles, starting, of course, as a teacher, moving into being a department chair, a director, a supervisor, and then principal and superintendent. Since I retired, I've remained active in this work, and through being the president of the New Jersey Alliance for Social, Emotional, and Character Development, and also serving as secretary of SEL for New Jersey, which is part of SEL for US. I've had a few other experiences in retirement too, working with Trish and working with Maurice Elias. I'm sure you know that name. And but this has all led me to do this work. I'm doing it because as an educator in New Jersey, I found that this work was very, very important, and decided that this is how I would like to remain productive in retirement. So some may say I failed retirement, but I think that, I have to say that the last 11 years, I've been able to do some things that are very meaningful to me and hopefully to some others. So I'd like to turn it over now to Vicki, and she'll introduce herself to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I don't think you failed anything, actually. I think you're doing very well. So I'm Vicki Blakeney. I am the facilitator of the second of the two courses, or three courses in this leadership program. But I also am now serving as the Director of Student Support for the Renton Public School District, which is a school district just in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. And my job here is to implement social emotional learning across the K-12 system. So one of my favorite things about being in this course and in this program is that every time I am introducing a new cohort to some of these concepts, they seem to be very fresh concepts for the work that I'm trying to do as on my day-to-day job as well. So I always tell the participants that I'm going to be learning with them, and it's very true. They'll send me resources and I'll implement some of their ideas as I'm moving forward, and we just go back and forth and build this really vibrant learning community together. And I come to this work through, I was a high school English teacher to begin with in Anchorage, Alaska. And as a part of my time in Anchorage, I started discovering social emotional learning without even knowing that's what it was called. And the Anchorage School District, it's been a long time now. That'll age me. I think about 18 years ago, posted a position for a social emotional learning curriculum coordinator, and I took on that position. And so as far as we know, I was the first SEL position embedded within a school district. So I had the chance to implement social emotional learning standards from within a school district for the next 8 years, and then went to work at the Department of Education in Nevada, looking at how to bring social emotional learning to a state system and policies and procedures around SEL at a state level. And then it eventually moved here to this district in Renton to do the same thing for the third time. So I've been a passionate advocate and practitioner of SEL for a number of years now. And welcome to our course. We look forward to having you. As you've heard, Donna will not be able to introduce herself today, but she is another one of our facilitators in the SEL 101 courses.
I'd like to ask Trish to introduce herself if she would, because you should meet her because she's the co-director of the whole thing. So Trish.
Thank you, Bill and Vicki, and we are really so appreciative in the Academy of the expertise that this collection and cadre of facilitators have. We have brought together, as you can just hear from Bill and Vicki, just people who have been steeped in this work. And who come to this too with such an attitude of being lifelong learners from you all as well. So that's really created the culture of the Academy. So thank you to them. So I am a professor of psychology and dean of the College of Professional Studies at St. Elizabeth University. And it's out of the Center for Human and Social Development there at the university that we have the Social Emotional Academy for learning in school. So Boris and I co-founded and created the Academy along with all of these facilitators, and it has been very successful and global. I also do a lot of hands-on work in K-12 schools, which I've been doing since 2011, and just have wonderful colleagues, and really it's a passion of all of ours that we love to share. So thank you, and thank you for being here, and we look forward to you joining the Academy.
Okay, Vicki, would you like to talk a little bit about our purpose tonight and what we have planned?
Absolutely. And I would like to kind of talk about the two first bullet points together and then let you read through the rest of them. Because the first two bullet points, I think, are the really important ones for you to recognize the interplay of. Because while we are going to be introducing to you the concepts that are a part of our SEL leadership program at the Academy, we're also hoping that one of your takeaways is that there are concepts that support SEL and SCCD implementation in your schools now, so that you're not just walking away with this being a long advertisement, but also with some particular maybe aha moments of things that you can do in your own working and implementation of social emotional learning and character development in your own schools. So we'll go through this in terms of introducing the structure of the courses and some of those aspects in the courses. And then we'll let you know what our facilitators and our participants have felt about the courses. But we also want you to be thinking through, oh, that's one of the things that they talk about in that course. I wonder if that's something that we could focus on in our own implementation as well, so that there's some relevance immediately to this webinar with you as well. And then, of course, as you heard, we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So please, if you do have particular questions so that you don't forget them, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will have time at the end to answer any of those questions.
The Academy Leadership Program, it's an online certificate program, and it really consists of three different courses, SEL 101, SEL 201, and SEL 301. First is Foundations for Social Emotional Leadership. Strategies for SEL Leadership is the second course that Vicki teaches. And there's a third course, which has its own webinar, which is offered separately, called the Practicum in SEL Leadership. And in the Practicum, our participants have a chance to actually implement those things that they've learned in the first two courses in their schools. There's a certificate that's awarded when you complete all of the courses, and the courses are graded on a pass, no pass basis. So it's our thought that that it's an experiential thing, and if everybody does all the assignments, they will pass. And frankly, 99% of our students do. And so that's a little bit about the program itself. The pedagogy that's involved in the course, in the courses, involves both synchronous and asynchronous activities. The synchronous activities our online workshop sessions using Zoom. And those are important because that's where a class of students really gels into a group. And it's interesting because in the first course, which is the shortest course, there are the most online sessions. The second course, which is in the middle in terms of length, has one less session, and the practicum course has 4 of these synchronous activities. But these are really important in terms of being able to get into a Zoom classroom and interact with your classmates and with our instructors. In addition to those, there are asynchronous activities. There are weekly assignments. They include articles and reading and discussion forum questions, which are really important because that's a really good way for you to be able to interact if you're in the course with the other people in the class. In 101, you create an elevator pitch, which we'll talk about later, and a final presentation. In 201, you put together an action plan proposal for your project, and that would be the project that's implemented in the practicum. So they're all part of the grading for the course, and there is an expectation, again, that these will be completed.
And Bill, what I wanted to tell people about that is 2 things. The first is once they leave that 101, those synchronous times become super important because when they join me for their first synchronous meeting, it's like an old time reunion, like they've known each other forever. There's some sort of cohort or community that's almost instantly built with these groups. And that community goes well beyond what you would imagine in terms of they've asked for things like, can we set up our own Facebook groups afterwards and things like that, because they really have gelled as a cohort of learners together. And then I wanted to also point out that our discussion format is a little different than some online courses that we've taken or I've personally taken in the past, because we really use that discussion format to continue building that cohort of learners together. So it's not just, did I read through the information and can I, post back to prove that I read it? It's actually really thought-provoking, and how do I interact with my colleagues and what can we learn together and what resources can we share? So I feel like that discussion time becomes a big part of the cohort as well.
The first course in the sequence is SEL 101. It's called Foundations for SEL Leadership. And frankly, one of the things that we want to do is introduce the courses to you, but I want to stress the fact that when we talk tonight about the structure of these courses, when we built the courses many years ago, and we've revised them since to keep them fresh, the whole idea is that this could be used as an implementation model for your work in your schools if you want to work on SEL. And by the way, SEL in terms of our definition is broad in the sense that it includes not just the 5 CASEL competencies, but also character education and some other things too. And we'll mention that a bit later. But the first course, the purpose of it is to provide a theoretical background for SEL leadership. It's 7 weeks long. There are 6 online sessions, and there are some of those other asynchronous activities that I mentioned. The focus is on student outcomes, including based on the implementation of SEL, including academic performance, career expectations, community and civic participation, and life readiness and emotional intelligence. So what we're going to do is kind of run through the sequence of learning in this course, and then we'll do the same for Vicky's course. So really, we want you to start with the vision. And this gives you an opportunity to do a little dreaming, if you wish, because what you're going to think about is what does an ideal school look like? And it's kind of a no holds barred activity. And what that means is that you don't have to be concerned about the normal limitations that we all face in education: money, time, resources. But what do you want that school to be like for you and for the kids? And that's really important. You can express that vision in words or pictures, and it does give you an opportunity to think about where you want to go, because that's your final destination. So as I say, this is an opportunity to do a little dreaming. The next thing that we talk about, and again, this is a model for implementation, you need to talk about what values are important to you. There are 6 up there that are very common at the top of the screen. Those are the character counts values, but they might not be the ones that are important to your school. And the values really have a lot to do with the behavioral expectations that you might have in your own building. What are these core values, and how do you want people to treat each other? That's very important. It's really important for the values to feed into what you might have as a code of conduct. So they also do have they do really have a behavioral connection to what you want your school to be like. And there's some other questions here on the sides. Are they a slide? Is it age appropriate? Or how are they reflected in discipline practices? And how do they help to develop a positive school culture and climate? So that's kind of the next discussion that we have, and it's an important one. The first course is about school culture and climate, and then about SEL, social emotional learning. We start with school culture and climate because that gives the institutional environment for the others to grow. And school culture and climate are not quite the same. And there's some very simple definitions here on this slide. Culture it really refers to the way we do things here. The ceremonies, the folklore involved with the school. So because it's so deeply seated, culture takes a long time to develop, and even more time if you want to change it. School climate really is the perception of the tone of the school on a day-to-day basis. So this could be something that changes day to day based on what's happening. And we talk about some examples of how that can happen in a school and what it means. We talk about the dimensions of culture and climate because it's important to think about how the culture really is wound into safety, relationships, teaching and learning, the institutional environment, and the school improvement process. So these dimensions are very important. And this is an important discussion to understand, again, the depth and the breadth of culture and climate in a school and how important that it is. So this is an important part of the discussion as well. A lot of these topics are covered either in our discussions in class or in our discussion forum questions, so that the students have a chance to interact with each other and talk about these things. But not only that, they have the opportunity to have a dialogue, if you will, in the discussion forum. After we talk about school culture and climate, which is really the first half of the course, we move on to social emotional learning. And social emotional learning, we use that as an umbrella term, as I said before. It can refer to the Castle 5, but it includes character education. It also encompasses other frameworks and approaches to similar skills and competencies. We talk about the importance of having a common language in terms of implementing it in the school, so everybody's talking about the same thing at the same time. We also make the connection between SEC. We use SECD, which is social, emotional, and character development. We kind of prefer that term, and how that connects to a positive school culture and climate. Then we move on to how do we implement SEL in schools? What are the best practices? Conducting an SECD inventory, looking at what's already there, trying to find what the gaps are, how you fill that gap to meet the needs of all students, because that's really one of the problems. It's a big challenge to have a school meet the needs of all students. We all talk about that, but it's very hard to do. We have an SEL development guide that provides ideas as to how this can be done, and we actually encourage our participants to use those ideas right away and to report to their classmates on their success. Leading SEL improvement efforts is really important. Why is leadership important? what denotes a leader? Do leaders have to have titles? We believe that they don't. We believe that a teacher is a leader. We believe that that everybody really involved in the school has a leader, can have a leadership role, and it's really important. And what's the role of leaders in setting a positive learning environment? We know that from the research that in a particular school, it's the principal who really takes the lead role in setting that. And we know that leadership takes courage, and even more so today with the politicization of education, that's even more important. We talk about advocating for SEL and school culture and climate, and there are two different projects that students do in order to practice advocating. And one is an elevator pitch, which is a short speech which advocates for SEL and SEC. The students need to think about a specific message and what their audience is, and students actually share those pitches with each other and comment on their work at the last online workshop. The last culminating experience of SEL 101 is the final presentation. And the final presentation allows students to expand on their knowledge, expand and actually expound on their knowledge of SEL and SCC. They do a short 10-minute presentation that includes narration. And we actually ask the students to think about picking a presentation that they can actually use in their school or their district. Because we don't just want to assign busy work. We want to assign meaningful work that people can use. And that we believe that both of these assignments can fill that role. These are also part of the grading for the course, by the way, and they are course expectations. So that's the nickel tour of SEL 101, and I'd like to turn it over to Vicki to do the same for SEL 201. So Vicki, it's your turn.
My pleasure, thank you. And I wanted to emphasize before I go too far into this, one of the things that I thought Bill said that was really important is that we think everybody can be a leader in this work. And so I just want to, I encourage you and those others listening that if you aren't a principal or a district employee like I am that leads SEL for the district, it doesn't matter. We've had people from classrooms, from nonprofits, from a lot of different environments. And what we try to do is shape it so that what you're doing is the next best step for your own work and implementing SEL in whatever capacity or influence that you actually have. So if it looks like when I'm talking from a district level perspective, that's because that's the framework that I bring to it, but that's not the framework that is required for somebody to be a participant that gets a lot out of this course. So SEL 201 takes the introductions that 101 offered, and then it goes deeply into the strategies behind those introductions. So we are a 12-week course. We meet 5 times synchronously and 12 weeks of asynchronous, but the last 3 of those weeks are really working towards a final project that we'll talk about towards the end. So it's kind of 9 weeks of really deep implementation sciences, and then 3 weeks of making it practical. So the first thing that you'll see is that we spend some time taking what Bill called the vision of SEL and why you're doing this work and really making it personal. So we believe that if you're going to lead SEL, that you need to model your own SEL strengths and your own willingness to grow in social emotional learning. And so the first couple of weeks are really looking at ourselves as leaders and ourselves as social and emotional beings. And we do a personal assessment around that. We set some goals for ourselves. We talk about what types of leadership styles are the most relevant for leading a social emotional learning initiative. And we do a lot of internal work and goal setting. I have to say it's one of the most interesting parts for me because I continue to do this course a couple times a year. And so I'm always going, wow, look at that. I grew in this, or I had to work on this again. Or so, you know, the idea is that our SEL leaders come to us with a willingness to continue to grow their own strengths, not come to us with some sort of, extra special strength in social emotional learning, but just more a willingness to understand that adults have to learn it as well. So that's what we spend the first couple of weeks looking at, is what those models of leadership would look like, what it means when we say that an SEL leader takes courage, and some of the readings behind that. So we look at Daniel Goleman's work, we look at some moral compass readers, and we look at Sergeant Shriver's work. So there's a lot of good, deep learning around leadership styles and personal SEL for the first couple of weeks. From there, we move to, you can go to the next slide if you want, Bill. From there we go, okay, so now that I've kind of centered myself as a leader, whether you're a teacher, a principal, a district administrator, a superintendent, now that I've centered myself as a leader, what can I do to assemble an SEL team for myself? Because we believe that the best leadership for social emotional learning is a distributed leadership and a shared leadership. We all know that innovations that come and go when the person who's excited about that innovation comes and leads it and then leaves the building. And that's not what we want for social emotional learning. So how do we distribute the leadership? How do we make sure that everybody's voice is heard as a part of our initiative? And we do that through learning about professional learning communities and discussing what makes an effective professional learning community, talking about the kinds of leaders we want in our professional learning communities, having discussions about whether your particular environment is going to thrive best by having everybody who's already bought in and volunteering, or if it's easier to have some people who might be not as excited about SEL on the team to express that voice. So we have some conversations around that. And then we talk about steps to build those SEL leadership teams in the first place and assemble the teams so that we are ready to lead from that perspective. If you're a teacher, we talk about who your allies can be. And if you feel like it's not something that's happening in your school yet, how do we get some allies and start talking about who our team would be and what we can do? And the next thing that we talk about a couple weeks later, so go ahead and move to the next slide, are how are we going to communicate to the rest of our stakeholders what social emotional learning would look like. So we think about the importance of effective communication, and then we actually break it down into the various different stakeholders that might need to hear about what we're trying to do with social emotional learning, and we decide what that would look like. Who's the best person to give that communication? What is the communication that we want to give? It's basically, as you see here, an outgrowth of the elevator pitch that you did in SEL 101. And my favorite part of this, I think the part that has stuck with me the most, is some of the work that we've done with Simon Sinek. If you haven't read his work or seen his videos, I would highly recommend them. You will see them as part of this course. We look at Simon Sinek's idea of starting with why. So we talk about the why of social emotional learning first before we talk about the what and the how of social emotional learning. And we get people bought into the vision in the first place. And then we talk about the stakeholders. Who's going to talk to the board of directors, who's going to talk to the fellow teachers, who's going to talk to the parents. And we just go through a deep communication plan to get ourselves started. And we actually do a practice plan around a problem of practice and who could communicate and how we're going to do that communication as part of our discussion. Once we have that, it's really important that our participants don't think of social emotional learning as strictly sort of the next curriculum that they can implement or the next project that they can do. Because when you look at a school, there are often all kinds of different efforts that are already happening that could potentially fall under an umbrella of social emotional learning. And so we really talk about, let's not just throw one more thing at it, because that leads to this sort of picture that you see here of the jumbled schoolhouse. This is, you heard Maurice Elias's name already. I want to credit Maurice Elias with this jumbled schoolhouse concept. If you really think about your own school settings right now, you might be able to think about well, yeah, we already do a lot of work around service learning projects, and we do a lot of work around tobacco cessation or health education or all these different things. And they all work kind of like social emotional learning or character development. So how do we not add one more thing to that plate, but rather the next picture will show you what we're really trying to do here. We try to use, if you want to go to the next slide, Bill. Yeah, we try to use social emotional and character development to instead, we call it unjumbling the schoolhouse. So we look a lot at our own personal places where you're working and where your political sway is. And we say, is there a way to use the frameworks that we're talking about to sort of unjumble our schoolhouse so that we can get to collective impact? So that it's not a whole bunch of different people leading a whole bunch of different initiatives, but can our leadership teams bring it all together under social emotional character development so that we're all working together going towards the same practice. So to do that, we start with, if you want to go to the next slide, we start with assessing the culture and climate. So I know you heard in the SEL 101, there's a lot of talk about what culture and climate is and how important it is, and how it has to be a fertile place before you can start any SEL program. And I'd say that is one of the big key takeaways from all of this for us, is that if you don't feel like your school has built a strong enough culture or climate, you don't want to implement any particular SEL programming yet. You want to implement climate improvement programming instead, because if it's not fertile ground for it, it doesn't work. So we look at how are we going to formally and informally assess the culture and climate. In fact, we do an informal assessment that we call it a feelings walkthrough. And it's really interesting because when I started my work in Anchorage as an SEL coordinator, I was at a high school before I even started working at the district. And I did this assessment myself at the high school and brought it to my high school first before I brought it to the district. So there's this staying power in these informal assessments just as much as there is in the formal ones. But then we also do a lot of looking at formal climate. How do we get the students' voice involved? How do we get the staff's voice involved? How do we know what's happening in the climate? And then we look at what you can do by digging into the data. So we look at various different types of normed and valid culture and climate assessments. And then we pick one and we dig through a sample data set and see what things we can learn from that data set. And we choose to offer these to you things that you might be able to dig into as participants that you could bring to your own setting as well. So we spend quite a bit of time on this, at least a couple of weeks on this before we go to the next piece. So once you've looked at the culture and climate in your own setting, then we look at whether the school policies or the district policies allow for social emotional learning to thrive. And the other way that we look at it is where can you sort of hook your wagon? So as an example, in Anchorage, when I was the social emotional learning coordinator there, another really big push in district programming was around culturally responsive education. Well, we think that social emotional learning goes hand in hand with culturally responsive education. So we were able to bring social emotional learning in on that initiative. When I was in Nevada, I was hired to work as part of the anti-bullying work and school climate work there. And social emotional learning has a really nice layout with anti-bullying work as well. So we look at the school district policies to make sure that they are not anti-social emotional learning, but also to see where there are some push and where you can get a foothold in SEL programming in the existing policies and procedures that are already happening. And we look at district visions and school visions to see where there's some foothold that we can grab for social emotional learning in the existing vision as well. We also look not just at existing school visions, but then we take that work that you did in SEL 101 to look at what you want as a vision for your own school. And we start reviewing other vision and mission statements for other schools and what they do for specific vision and mission statements for where they're trying to go with social emotional learning. Sometimes it's connected to the regular school or district vision, and sometimes we have our SEL leadership teams design their own vision and mission for SEL and why they are part of a SEL leadership team, a PLC, and why they want to bring SEL to that particular school. And that way, the rest of the work that we're doing is aligned to what is our vision for this work, where are our gaps, and where are we from meeting that vision, and what kind of action steps can we take to get us closer to that vision. So we actually work in one of our synchronous times on developing a shared vision together as a cohort. And that way our cohort has the experience of leading a PLC through a vision activity that they can bring. And typically what happens at the end of that session is they say, oh, this is great because I was just supposed to be doing this work next with my own group. And so they take it and immediately apply it, which I really appreciate. Eventually, we start talking about not just the district policies, but also those political factors that might implement or get in the way of implementation, either one that might be barriers or might be allies to implement social emotional learning. And we look at what those are in our own settings. So we might look in general, but we also try really hard to have you do some digging into your own settings and look for who your allies are in your own settings and to go through some of your barriers in your own settings. And then we actually have a chance to talk with our cohort because, as you can tell by this point, we've been together for a while and we're able to really support each other. So there are times when our synchronous times come and somebody will just start the synchronous time with, look, I ran into this, anybody have some ideas? And we stop what we're doing for a little while and just share ideas with each other to get through some of the barriers that they might have talked about. And we also, of course, celebrate when we find new allies. Or so oftentimes what happens is that they will let their school boards know, or their superintendents or whoever they're working with know that they're in these courses. And then they'll find that they were given audience that they didn't expect to have. So they'll come and say, guess what? I get to talk to whoever it is that they get to talk to next about implementation. And they share that with us at this time. And we talk about that as well and support them and how to get there. Well, as I mentioned, the last few weeks are really around creating our final projects. And so to create our final projects, we talk about what your next best step will be. So we start digging into various implementation guides. So Castle has an implementation guide, Maurice Elias has one, Dunkelbaugh has an implementation guide. We look at various implementation guides of proven strategies for implementing social emotional learning. And we've done so much about looking at our own personal settings with who our leadership teams could be, what our political factors are, all of those things that by the time we get to this point, it feels like we're able to choose where we are in implementation in our own settings. And then what we do is really dig into, well, what would a really good next best step be for that? And we make sure that each person has a chance to talk through their next best steps with their cohorts. And we use that next best step to create our final project. Because what we're going to do is present a final project that is aligned to a proven implementation guide that looks at our own political factors, and then that would take us to implementation of whatever's next. So it might be building an SEL leadership team. It might be assessing your own climate. It might be writing a vision statement. It might be implementing an actual curriculum. And wherever we are with that next best step, they put that together in a proposal, and that proposal leads to the SEL 301 that you can learn about in another webinar that they turn into their practicum. So we look for like a 12-week implementation next best step that can become the practicum for SEL 301.
Okay, that sort of runs through the structure of both of the first two courses of the leadership program. I hope that in listening to what we had to say, that you see that that we've tried to model exactly what a school leader would do in terms of looking to improve the school culture and climate, as well as implement social emotional learning and character development in their school. So, I hope that that makes some sense. And certainly, if you have questions about that, we can handle that in a minute. But first, I'd like to share, and Vicky's going to chime in on this too. We're going to talk a little bit about our experiences as instructors in this program, and just what we have found from working with lots of students over, I don't know, quite a few years now. We feel the combination of synchronous and asynchronous activities give us an effective way to present and share the content of the course. I have to admit, personally, I wasn't all that enthusiastic about doing an online course. I'd been involved in one years and years and years before this program came into being, and I was a little bit leery. But the way this course is put together, and the convenience of using a meeting room online, all of my doubts were completely just faded away. And I'm glad that Mari's talked me into doing it, because it's a very it really is a very good experience. We talked a little bit before, Vicky did, about how an online class from all over the world perhaps can become a cohesive group. And frankly, it happens very quickly. And that was one of the surprises to me when I first started teaching this. In addition to which, having participants from lots of different places across the country and across the globe, it really does add to the richness of the experience. And one of the things that we found out from students and talking to students, whether they were from South Korea or California or New Jersey or Texas or wherever, one of the things that we found out was that there's more similarities than differences. As Vicky said, networking among course participants is long lasting, and it's been interesting to work with teams of participants from the same school or institution, because that gives them a really rather unique opportunity. Talking about student experiences, we've had groups of teachers from South Korea, Malaysia, Philippines. I didn't mention Mexico, but that's another one, that work together in the academy on a weekly basis, and then go back and implement what they've learned in their schools. That feels great to me, and I'm sure Vicky would agree, that when you know that what you're working with people and having a direct impact on what's happening in their schools, that is very validating to the work that we do. The students report that the quality of materials and reading is very high and very helpful, and that the projects and assignments have been useful and have had a direct impact on the schools. Again, we've tried to design the courses so that it's not just busy work that they do, that it's work that means something and that they can use. So, I think that that's a pretty good synopsis of the things that we have heard from our students. Vicky, did you want to add anything to that?
I think just that, exactly what you said. I want to emphasize that again. There have been a few times where I've had the opportunity to go to, say, a national conference on social emotional learning, and the people that I'm used to seeing in these little screens will come up and talk, and it's like we've been old friends for a long time, and we immediately re-interact with each other and maybe meet for dinner or things like that because of our experiences together on in these cohorts. So and like I said, I also really appreciate that the cohorts are usually really willing to share resources. And so I will walk away staying really current in the work that I'm doing, because I'm learning from other people across the country and across the globe who are doing similar work, and they can tell me about an article that they just read or an instance that they just managed, and we talk together through it, and then I often find that it becomes incredibly relevant for myself as well. So it's been a really valuable experience for our teams to work together through this information.
The program itself has had a significant record of success, and I don't want to brag, but I think that that we really have, and we've done some program evaluation, and the results are here on this slide. And I'll just pick out the one that comes to mind first is over 80% of all 120 survey respondents indicated that they found the training to be very or extremely useful in their current job. That's how we designed the course. So of everything that we see here, again, the connectedness, we've talked about the connectedness of the cohort, how quickly that forms into a meaningful group. And so I think that we certainly can take pride in the information that you see here. Now, here's some student quotes, and we're not going to read all of them, but if you take a minute, and we'll make this PowerPoint available to you as well following. But I think that at least these are 5 quotes that are kind of represent the student opinion about the course. And each one of them has a little different focus, which is why we included them. But again, we talk about, like, if you look at the last one, what I was able to do is talk to my curriculum and instruction director. We'd say, I just learned this. Can I implement it? Can we do it? And again, that to me is really important for our work. So again, I think the students would agree with us in terms of the relevancy of the course and the impact that it can have on the school. In addition, the Academy was recognized as an exemplary program. This was a report that was done by Castle, and they were working with teacher educators at the University of British Columbia. And it was talking about doing a national scan of programs in teacher prep for SEL. Our Academy for SEL Leadership was named as an exemplary program in that report. We're very proud of that, and there's a link here to this report, which is called "To Reach the Students, Teach the Teachers." So again, we're doing a little bragging. So now I'd like to open it up for Q&A, and I haven't seen any questions posted in the chat. So if you have a question, please unmute and ask it. And these, what you see on the slide now, are excerpts from the website.
Yes, it's a very easy process to apply and get registered for the courses. As you see with the red arrow, if you go to our website and click on the button that says enroll, and then at step 1, click on the apply green button, you will get to our online application, where we request some information about yourself. And we also ask you for a brief personal statement about what you envision yourself gaining from being in the Leadership Certificate program. So that is then reviewed, and you will receive confirmation of acceptance or a follow-up question potentially very soon thereafter. And then Melanie Conti, who is the co-director of the center with me, is extremely supportive and available for students to help them to be registered and answer any questions that you have. When you are going to be ready to go into 201 and 301, it's again a simple outreach. You don't have to apply again. we have an easy step for you to say, I'm ready to go, and we'll get you registered in 201, and the same with 301. And then at the end of the 301, if you completed those courses, we will automatically send you not only the certificate of completion, but we also provide you with the number of hours that are equivalent to the work that you've done. For those of you who need that for professional development credit, et cetera. We have had really no one have issues with requesting that the tuition for the program be covered by the professional development budget of your district or school. But again, we are happy to pick up the phone and help you work through any and all of the systems. But I just wanted to just communicate that it's a very simple, straightforward process. And it is something that we are there to help to support you through as well. So thank you very much.
I might just add that that districts have ESSA funds now that can be used for professional development and social emotional learning and character development. So if you have an interest in being involved in the academy, you may be able to use those funds to pay your tuition. Something to look into.
And the contact slide, I think, and
Right. And, you know, if you need to get in touch with any of us, if you have questions, my email is there, Vicky's and Donna's are also there. And there's a hyperlink for the Academy website where you can get more information. And we are exactly at 8:30, and love it when a plan comes together. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I hope it's been valuable to you. And it would be great if we see you in the academy. I hope that you will consider it. We think it's a great program, and we think it really is relevant to what's important in schools today, particularly at this time. So thank you for being with us tonight.